Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the video. This is a series of videos in which I'm trying to improve my E36 drift car by swapping in a bigger engine. So far, I've done some maintenance on the new engine and I made room in the engine bay by removing the old one. This time, I'm planning to do some things on the car while the engine is still out and I have plenty of room to work with.
Imagine doing this while the engine is still in the car. Nah, you're not doing it.
And I'm also trying to finish everything on the M54 and then install it in the car. There's a lot to do, so let's begin. The first thing that I removed was the fuel tank breather valve and filter. I'm not gonna need this anymore, but I'll have to figure out whether or not the new setup needs something like this. Then I replaced the old rubber steering linkage bushing with a brand new polyurethane one, provided by Skid Shop. As always, link to the part is in the description. I ended up not using the washers provided as they were a little bit too big to sit flush with the surface. The installation was also a bit harder as the new bushing is a tad bit longer, but luckily there wasn't a huge ass inline 6 engine in the way.
Imagine doing this while the engine is still in the car. Nah, you're not doing it.
There was still one more extra connector and also some wires that were cut because of the LPG conversion. I had to fix that, so I soldered the wires of the same color back together, and if I messed anything up, I'll probably find out when I'm going to be doing the wiring later. Next up, I had a couple of things to take care of inside the car. For the longest time now, I wanted to remove the OEM alarm box, and this was the perfect opportunity. I didn't know how I was going to do it, so I decided to take out the whole dash.
Bazinga. Kurwa, seco, prasec, chudić.
It turns out that I didn't need to take the whole dash out. If you just take the glove box out, you'll be able to do it. You just have to snip some zip ties, unplug the alarm module. I also removed the module because I wanted to have a whole set for when someone wants to buy it off me. And then just thread the wires to the firewall and Bob's your uncle. Then I had to zip tie the remaining wires and reassemble the dash.
It'd be super funny if I snipped an entire loom like that. What is this? Oh, would you look at this? Gotta love them. Pop. There we are.
Moving on to the driver's side, here I have to remove the accelerator pedal. The previous engine used the throttle cable, but this one uses throttle by wire, so I'm going to have to replace the whole pedal assembly.
Okay, fair enough.
going to be running a bigger gearbox, and while it's bigger, it's also about 2 centimeters longer. That means I have to shorten the shifter. Or alternatively, I can install a short shifter. I had a cheap one from eBay lying around, waiting to be put in. Again, this is a perfect opportunity.
Yeah, fun facto. I only had to pull it out of here and then the whole thingamabobber jumped out. Let's see what I can do now. Now, eject. That's the way. Separated now. Easy spy, holy fuck, look at him. Look at the lad. That's it.
Now that I had both of the engines out of the car, I needed to swap the engine mounts from one to another. The right one is a custom one that my dad made a few years back when the original broke. It wasn't me who broke it. If you're watching this, you know who you are.
It fits. Lovely shit.
While the right one fit no problem, there was a slight complication with the left one. As it turns out, the left engine mounts from the M50s and the M54s are about 95% the same. The only difference is that the M54 ones have one of the bolt holes a little bit to the right. I wasn't confident that I could modify the original one to make it work, so I decided to fabricate a new one. Just for a test fit, I installed the mount with the 3 holes that lined up. Oh yeah, and another thing. The new block is aluminum, which means it's pretty much chocolate compared to the previous steel one. So I had to be super fucking careful not to strip any threads. Luckily for me, the test fit was successful, and so I knew that the left mount is pretty much identical with the exception of the bolt hole. Next up, I had to install the oxygen sensors. Hopefully there won't be any problem with the headers as the holes are a little bit different. Aw, shit. Some of you may already know the old proverb that reads, "If it shifts, it drifts." This piece of ancient knowledge talks about how, in order to achieve the act of drifting, first the condition of shifting must be met. Which means that the next thing I need is the gearbox. But as I needed some hardware to mount it, I took the old transmission off the engine, and it luckily provided me with everything I needed. It was a little bit of a struggle to get it off, but eventually I managed to do it.
Oh, this one's not that heavy at all.
So you might be wondering why not just use the old transmission. It's still perfectly fine and it also fits on the new engine. Well, yes, you're right. But unfortunately it can't handle the power of the new engine. And as I'm not a fan of stripping gears, I decided to go with something a bit more girthy. Now look at this fine piece of engineering. This absolute unit of a transmission is called the ZF S531, or just ZF for short. It can handle up to 310 Newton meters of torque, and it'll be perfect for enduring all those violent shifts I'll be throwing at it. Also, if you look at both of the gearboxes, you can see how much wider the ZF is compared to the previous Getrag. These flywheel bolts came with the engine, so I took them out and cleaned them up for a brand new install.
Hold up, what the fuck?
Except that these bolts were from that automatic skinny flywheel and they were way too short. So I once again had to resort to taking the hardware from the old engine. The whole flywheel and clutch assembly was provided by Skid Shop. The flywheel is modified from dual to single mass, weighing in at about 9 kilos. The clutch disc is a 240mm performance clutch with a pressure plate to boot, and a brand new throwout bearing to nicely wrap up the whole package. We also replaced the old plastic clutch fork pivot pin for a brand new steel one. And as always, all the parts used will be down in the description. For the last little thing, we also tested whether the starter works. When the transmission was mated to the engine, I had to make that engine mount I was talking about earlier. Right, so how did I do it? Since I had the old mount, which fit exactly with the exception of that one hole, I used that to make a template on cardboard. I then measured the angle of the intersecting planes on which the mount was supposed to be bolted on. And then I molded it out of sheet metal in SolidWorks. I made the drawings and then sent them out to be cut. When I got the pieces cut, it was time to tack weld them and see how well it fits. And it fits like garbage. During the modeling phase, I did some simplifications, which I don't even know what I was thinking, and I couldn't even save this, so I had to start again. This time I used cereal box material, or whatever that's called, instead of cardboard, as it is easier to bend. And this time I straight up photocopied it and put it in SolidWorks. Plus, I made a little cardboard model of it to see if all the pieces aligned. And I think this time it came out a bit better even. When I got the parts, it was again time to tack them. I'm not a very skilled welder, so tacks kept breaking on me, and also this happened. Oh, something broke.
Yeah, this one broke. You gotta love it. You gotta love it. Ah!
But I kept trying and eventually I got something that was good enough. However, the more difficult part was welding the droopy piece, I don't know what to call it, so I'm just calling it that, to the mounting plate, as I had to really nail the position.
Well, that's a spot weld. That's a textbook spot weld right there. Look at them.
I tested it on a template and on the engine itself, and it looked like everything was fine, so it was time to weld it for real. Here I separated the droopy part and welded that first, because I wasn't sure if it was going to work. Then I once again carefully tacked it to the plate and welded it.
Yeah, that's spot on. That's spot on.
And to finish it off, I put a nice coat of paint on it. Overall, I'm pretty satisfied. It has a minor case of caterpillar welds, but I think it should still hold fine. Now it was finally time to install the engine and the transmission combo in the car.
Ah, look at them go, huh? Such a fine boy.
And there we go. The engine is finally in the car and needs to be bolted down. I also had a fresh pair of transmission mounts ready to be put in. As everything else, these are also available on Skid Shop.
Look at them. Time to pop it in.
Then I also installed the gear linkage and the clutch slave cylinder.
Plop it in. A little bit of sandpaper and just go ham. Just make sure that that everything is straight.
Sadly, the bushing on the short shifter was a little too wide, so I had to sand it down.
After a whole bunch of sanding, it's now in. Now for the slave cylinder. I ended up lowering the transmission a little bit. Hope it'll help. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a clutch. And we have a transmission as well.
With all that, the M54 is now finally in the car, patiently waiting for the day when it'll be first started. Now we just need to sort out the water hoses, power steering, wiring, exhaust and the drive shaft. Hopefully, if all goes well, we'll be able to start it and maybe even drive it in the next video. But before you go, I'd like to say that if you enjoyed the video, I would really appreciate it if you give it a like, maybe even subscribe to be notified when new videos come out. It helps out a lot, but if you don't want to, that's also fine. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!